Today we're going to be installing a Humminbird SOLIX 10 on this 2020 Beavertail Vengeance. We're going to go ahead and get started. First thing, of course, what we're going to do is we have painters taped the entire area off. That is for a few different reasons. While we're working up here, we don't want to ding gel coat, get any scratches. That'll protect us from that. Our tools and saws that are going to be working up here, it's going to protect any damage from those. So we are going to tape that down, which we've already done. Next step in the process is taking a little bit of a step back and looking at the install as a whole, looking for clearance issues. You need to get back there and physically take a look and see what your restrictive factors are. On this install, we have a few things that we're working with. We have cup holders that are piercing down gear here on the front, and we have bearing edges that we need to get past because these guys are choosing to do an in-dash mount. This is the in-dash kit that Humminbird sells, and this is going to have more size on the back even than the screen, and these margins are pretty tight. So this one was a little bit tricky. What we ended up doing was figuring out where those margins were, and we got our screen with spacers so everything is nice and plumb, and we got our screen about where we thought we wanted it, and then we traced that out. And once we've got that tracing there, we can use the Humminbird cutout that we have cut to all of their plumb edges. We can get that placed on a line that we know is plumb and good and centered. And then what we will do, we'll know at that point that everything is plumb. We know everything is plumb here, and everything's going to be square. And then we want to get this down in a good square, stretch the edges as you tape them down, make sure they're nice and tight so it's flat and everything is even. And this should be perfectly plumb and should give us a screen that's going to look great in the dash and be straight. So now that we have the template taped down where we want it, and it's plumb and it's centered to our center line, there are center hash marks on the template itself. We have those lined up now. Now we're going to trace out our cut line. So this one's a pretty important line. We want to take our time, and we'll go ahead, begin very carefully tracing where we're going to run the saw around this template. You want to go very slow, takes a steady hand. I like to reinforce the template so it doesn't slide as we go. Just a little bit of pressure up against the side of the template will keep the marker running in a straight line. Now for the right side, again reinforcing as we go. Now for our bottom edge, again, keeping that template in place as we go. There we go. Now we have our cut line ready, and now I'm going to grab the jigsaw, and we're going to get ready to cut this hole out. A few words here on safety and common sense. Fiberglass, we are going to be creating particles. We need a breathing apparatus. We're going to have things flying everywhere. We need something over our eyes. Today we're lucky enough that's just going to, my sunglasses are going to double. A bit of a word on tools. We're going to need a drill to get our pilot holes started so we can get our saw started in the dash. I use a 3/8 bit to get started. A jigsaw bit will fit inside that nicely. Jigsaw, this one just happens to be cordless because we do this a lot. And a word on bits for the jigsaw. This little fella here will save you a bunch of time. This is a bit that we're going to use today. This is a bit that is actually made for ceramic cutting for the jigsaw, and this one goes through fiberglass like butter. So we really like that. We get clean cuts, no chips. It's good too. We have a bottom edge here that's going to be a little bit difficult for us to work with. This dash is not completely flat, so since the jigsaw won't fit across the bottom edge, we're going to be using a rotozip saw, the standard cutting blade, for that tougher cut across the bottom. Going to go ahead and do our first. I'm going to do all four corners so that we have access points at all four corners to get started if we need to. Making sure that we're not going to penetrate through here. Also, another word, if you'll notice, we have taken the steering wheel off. We've got our shifter out of our way. At this point, we need ultimate access. We really need everything to be as easy as it can be. So here we go. Let's go ahead and start with our first. Drill completely straight up and down, going into the fiberglass straight. Now we're gonna go ahead and make our cut. One thing to keep in mind when you're doing this, a couple of things to keep in mind when you're doing this, is you always need to be cognizant supporting the weight of the jigsaw as you make this cut so you don't end up with a bent cut. Also, you may not think it's very important, but the line that we drew, where we cut on that line, because the tolerances are so slight, we need to make sure that it's the outside edge. So I'm going to use, with this bit, it's a little bit wider, I'm going to go straight down my line, and that way my cut is going to be on the actual outside of that line, not the inside and not outside of the outside. So let's go ahead and get started. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the other 3 sides. All right, our cut's done. Now let's check the fit. Looks good to me. So now I need to get my tape pulled off and this entire area cleaned up. But in the meantime, we're gonna move to Jake at the back, who has started to install the Transom mount transducer for this Humminbird.
While Steve is mounting the SOLIX 10 on the dash, I'm back here about to start mounting the Transom mount transducer, which will give us depth and fish finding capabilities on this skiff. To start with, we are going to want to mount the transducer on the starboard side of the boat because we have a standard rotating prop. Also, we want to check where we mount the transducer that there's no running strakes or pickups along the bottom side of the hull, underneath the hull, directly in front of the transducer. So once we found our spot, we actually want to get it taped off, blue taped off here, so because when we drill our holes, we don't want gel coat chipping or damage anything along onside the transom here. At that point, we want to get the transducer and we want to line it up where the bottom, very bottom of the transducer is flush or just a 1/4 inch below the bottom of the boat. So what we want to do is when we're happy with the position that we're in, we want to take a flat edge and we want to run it underneath and make sure that it's sitting flush with the bottom of the boat, not overhanging too much and not above. So I'm happy with right about there. Once we're happy with that, we're going to get our marks a lot and we're going to mark our holes where we're going to drill. After getting our marks, we're going to want to get back and realign and make sure we're happy with where we put those marks. If you're happy and everything's looking right and the transom mount transducer is sitting flush with the bottom of the boat, we can go ahead and drill our 3 holes. We want to go back after drilling these holes, take off the blue tape, take your regular Phillips bit, and we want to chamfer the holes. And we're doing this so when we're screwing the actual screws in that hold the bracket, it's not chipping the gel coat along the way. And by chamfering, you're running this bit in reverse. Now that we've got the holes drilled, we're ready to mount the transducer. When mounting the transducer, we're going to use 3M 5200 or 4200 underwater sealant. This prevents any water intrusion, and it's a permanent adhesive of this transducer to the back of your boat. We don't want it flying off, and we don't want screws ripping out. Once I got the first screw in, I can adjust this transducer up or down to make sure it is aligned flush with the bottom of the hull. Once I'm there, I'm going to tighten it down completely. When applying sealant to the screws as well, you don't need to use too much. Only cover the first 3 or 4 threads of the bottom of the screw. Will be plenty to make sure you have a good sealed hole. Now that I've got the transducer mounted, I can go ahead and adjust the transducer itself on the bracket and tighten it down in place. Got a couple zip ties that they provide that we can mount this cable to the side of the bracket to keep it up and out of the way. And cut our access of the zip ties away. Now we can mount this cable. We want to use a couple wire holders, and we can mount them here and here, and then we're going to drill through the transom and run the wire through the transom. A little bit of 5200 on the screws that we're going in to keep it sealed up. Now that we've got the wire attached to the hull with its wire hangers, we're ready to go ahead and drill through the transom. Before we do that, we want to check clearances on the other side of the transom to make sure that there is no hoses in the way, there is not a live well, or there's just no obstacles in the way, so you've got a clear shot to run through without damaging anything on the other side. We're ready to go ahead and drill our hole. So we are bottomed out on the hole saw bit, so I'm gonna have to go from the inside to finish the cut. Since the bit already went through, I have a guide point, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish it from the inside of the transom. Now that I've got the hole completely drilled all the way through, it's time to run the cable through the hole. Once we got the cable ran through all the way, we're gonna use the clamshell to cover the hole up, and we are gonna backfill it with silicone and then get the cable ran through up to the helm. We've got the wire ran through the transom and the clamshell mounted on the transom. I'm going to go ahead and finish up with a little bit of silicone up into the clamshell to make sure it is completely watertight and waterproof. Now that we've got that done, we're going to go ahead and finish up with running the wire up to the helm and getting it plugged into the display.
Well, here we are. We have our hole in the dash ready to go. We have all of our cabling pulled through. We have our power cable hooked up per manufacturer's recommendations with a fuse in line, and we're ready to get this guy going. So we're going to hook up our power wire, really making sure that she's seated and clamped down tightly. We also have our sonar wire coming from the transducer. Again, we want to make sure that these are firmly in and secured. If the locks don't go tight, you've got an issue. Last but not least, I-Link. Get our information from the trolling motor. Now again, we're doing the in-dash mount here, so we needed to stage the in-dash mount. We've got our studs already in the back of the screen with the set nuts here. So I'm going to pass this down and through to Jake, because that needs to be in there and the wires need to be passing through. I am going to make sure that the screen is perfectly straight where we like it or where we want it. This is your opportunity for your final tweaks. Millimeters count. Take a close look. Wait, make sure you're happy, and then tighten down. All right, nice and tight.
Yep, should be good to go.
Beautiful, yeah. Very nice, very happy with the straight. So we've now got the screen in. At this point, we're happy with what we've got. What we're going to do is we're going to end up pulling this screen back off now. We're going to get our cables at the exact length that we want them. Jacob's going to work on some zip ties and getting some strain relief going back there. We're going to run a nice bead of silicone around the screen. This is a flat spout. We need to waterproof this thing and get the screen seated back in for the final time, get it bedded down, and then that'll be it. Now let's go ahead and see. Get the battery switch going here. Should have power. And voila, it's a very small boat network, which is going to link the Talon and the iPilot Minn Kota Tarova to this machine for functionality and control of these devices from the screen. And she's making her way through her startup. So confirm. And wow, there we go. Humminbird's already got a fix on where we are. Let's go home. Cycle through, see if our sonar is picking up. We've got our quad split with our sonar. Should be coming up. There we go. We're not in the water right now, so it is what it is. That's the installation of our Humminbird SOLIX 10 on the Beavertail Skiff.